Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling something I think a lot of people find kind of mysterious, and that's software testing.
Okay.
And, we've all used software. We all know it's important that it works. But a lot of us aren't really sure how to go about making sure that it works.
Right.
And especially if you're a developer or you are involved in a software project, you want to know how to create a test plan to ensure that things go smoothly.
Yeah.
We're going to dive into the why behind the steps so you can really level up your software quality game.
Exactly.
So joining us today is an expert in the field,
Hello.
and we're ready to get into it.
Awesome.
So I guess just to start off, a lot of people, when they think about software testing, they just think, okay, we're just trying to find bugs. But I think it goes a lot deeper than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe you could start off by telling us a little bit about, what is the true purpose of a test plan? Why is it so important?
Yeah, so it's really about thinking of it as like a blueprint for quality, right? So like an architect, you wouldn't build a skyscraper without having really detailed plans.
Right.
So we need that same kind of attention to detail when we're building software, right? So a test plan really guides that entire process, and it helps us identify any potential issues early on,
Okay.
and really just to make sure that we're building the right thing the right way.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So how do we, go about creating this blueprint? I've heard there are different steps or methodologies, but I'm curious, how do we approach this in a systematic way?
Yeah, there's actually a pretty solid 8-step process that you can follow
Okay.
to make sure that you're covering all the bases.
Okay.
And I think a good way to kind of illustrate this is to use a practical example. So let's say we're building a banking website like Guru 99 Bank.
Guru 99 Bank.
Yeah, just a hypothetical.
Okay.
And we want to make sure that this website is secure and that it functions properly for all of our users.
Makes sense.
So let's walk through those 8 steps and see how they apply to Guru 99 Bank.
Okay.
The very first step is all about really understanding the product you're testing.
Got it.
So in this case, we need to analyze Guru 99 Bank inside and out.
Okay.
What are its features? What's its functionality? What are the user expectations?
Right.
This is like laying the foundation for our blueprint.
Yeah.
If we don't understand what we're building,
Right.
how can we test it effectively?
That's true.
Right.
Yeah, you got to know what you're working with.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've analyzed the product. We understand what Guru 99 Bank is all about.
Right.
What's next?
Step 2 is designing the test strategy.
Okay.
And this is where we determine the overall approach. So what types of testing are we going to use? Are we going to focus on functional testing,
Okay.
ensure everything works as expected? Or do we need to prioritize security testing to protect, that sensitive user data?
Oh, especially with a bank. That's
Yeah.
It's really important.
Absolutely.
So the strategy we choose really depends heavily on what we're building and what it's for.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, so we've got the strategy in place.
Right.
Now what?
Okay, so now we need to get really specific. Step 3 is defining our test objectives.
Okay.
What are we trying to achieve through this whole process?
Yeah.
So for Guru 99 Bank, we might want to ensure seamless account creation, secure transactions, maybe easy navigation.
Right.
So those clear objectives really give us a target
Yeah.
to aim for.
Yeah, we know what we're trying to accomplish
Exactly.
and how we're going to measure our success.
Yeah.
So we've got our objectives. What's the next step?
Okay, so step 4 builds on those objectives by defining our test criteria.
Okay.
And this means establishing benchmarks to determine if the software passes or fails a test.
Okay.
So we need to ask ourselves, what conditions have to be met for us to say, hey, this feature's good to go?
Right.
So we define things like, what is an acceptable pass rate for our test cases? And we set clear suspension criteria.
Oh, okay.
So for example, if a certain number of critical tests fail, we might pause testing entirely until we address those issues.
That's interesting.
And that helps prevent wasted effort and make sure we're focusing on the most important areas.
Right, because if there's a fundamental flaw,
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense to test all the little details
exactly.
until that's fixed.
Right.
Okay, so we've got our criteria set.
Right.
Now are we starting to think about the more practical side of things?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Steps 5 and 6 are all about getting organized and setting up our testing environment.
Okay.
So step 5 is resource planning.
Okay.
This involves identifying everything we'll need, the people, the tools, the infrastructure.
Got it.
Think of it like a detailed map of who does what, when they do it, what resources they need to be successful.
Right.
This helps avoid delays and ensures we have the right expertise.
So it's all about making sure we have the right people in the right roles
Exactly.
with the right tools.
Yeah,
And then we kind of like set up the actual testing ground.
exactly.
Okay.
Step 6 is planning that test environment.
Okay.
So we're literally setting up the stage for our testing performance.
So in the case of Guru 99 Bank,
Right.
we'd want something that looks like, an actual banking website.
Exactly. We might set up a separate testing server
Yep.
that mimics the live environment,
Got it.
or use specific tools to simulate, like user traffic,
Right.
and make sure it works seamlessly across all the different devices and browsers people might use.
Right. That makes sense because you wouldn't want to test it in an environment that looks nothing like
Right.
what people are actually going to be using.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the stage set. What about the timeline?
Right.
How do we, schedule everything and make sure we stay on track?
So that brings us to step 7,
Hmm.
schedule and estimation. We create this detailed timeline for all of our testing activities, mapping out when each task will be completed.
Okay.
We also estimate the effort required for each task, whether it's hours, days, weeks, whatever it might be.
Right.
This helps manage expectations and make sure that the testing process aligns with the overall project timelines.
So it's like we're, planning out a road trip. We want to know
Let's hear it.
what we're going to see along the way and how long it's going to take us.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got our schedule, we've got our environment set up. Now what's the final output of all this work?
Right, so that's step 8, determining our test deliverables.
Okay.
So this is what documents, reports, artifacts are we going to produce throughout the whole process.
Okay.
These deliverables provide a record of what we tested, how we tested it, what we found,
Right.
and can include things like, our test plans, test cases, bug reports, summary reports,
Right.
to communicate our findings to the developers and everyone else.
So we're creating a history of our
Okay.
testing journey. And that makes a lot of sense because you want to be able to see what's been done
Right.
and what the results were.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I'm sensing a theme here. A lot of planning and preparation
Sure.
goes into ensuring that, the software is really meeting those high standards of quality.
Yeah, it's all about setting ourselves up for success, right?
Right.
And these 8 steps are just the foundation.
Okay.
Now let's kind of dive deeper into some of the key concepts that really underpin this whole process.
Okay.
Because understanding the why behind each step will empower you to create really effective test plans.
I'm ready to dive deeper.
Awesome.
Let's start with something I've always been curious about.
Okay.
How do we determine what to test
Yeah.
and what to leave out?
Right.
I'm talking about defining the scope of testing.
Absolutely. So defining the scope is kind of like drawing a boundary
Oh,
around our testing efforts.
got it.
We need to decide what's in scope,
Okay.
the things we're going to focus on, and what's out of scope,
Oh,
the things that we're intentionally going to leave out for now.
got it.
So, for example, for Guru 99 Bank,
Mm-hmm.
testing those core banking functions,
Right.
account creation, deposits, withdrawals,
Yeah.
that's definitely in scope.
Right.
But maybe testing the performance of the website under, extreme user load,
Right.
that might be something we save for later.
That makes sense.
So it's all about prioritizing
Yeah.
based on the goals and the constraints.
Right. So we've got to figure out what's most important for
Exactly.
this particular stage.
Right.
Okay. So even within that defined scope, there are so many different ways we can test software.
Oh, yeah.
How do we choose which types of testing
Right.
are for the project?
So that's where understanding the different types comes in.
Okay.
Each type focuses on a specific aspect of software quality.
Got it.
So, for example, functional testing.
Mm-hmm.
That's making sure the software does what it's supposed to do. Buttons work, forms submit correctly, calculations produce the right results.
Right. Like the basic functionality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then you have performance testing,
Okay.
which assesses how well it handles, different levels of user traffic.
Oh, okay.
Can it handle 1,000 users concurrently without slowing down?
Right. Right. Because that's a big issue with a lot of websites and apps.
Especially for something like a banking website where you
Right.
can't afford to have downtime.
Right. Exactly.
And then, of course, we have security testing,
Mm-hmm.
super important for Guru 99 Bank.
Right. You don't want any vulnerabilities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that sensitive data is protected.
Right.
And then you have compatibility testing,
Okay.
which ensures it works seamlessly across different browsers, operating systems, and devices.
Right. Because everybody's using something different these days.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's like assembling a toolkit.
Yeah. I like that analogy.
Each tool has a specific purpose, and it helps us uncover different types of issues.
So it's about choosing the right tools
Yeah.
for the job.
Exactly.
Okay, so even with the best tools and a well-defined plan, things can still go wrong.
Oh, absolutely.
So how do we kind of proactively address those potential risks or challenges?
Yeah, so that's where risk management comes in.
Okay.
It's all about identifying those potential problems up front
Okay.
and developing strategies to mitigate them.
So it's like having a plan B.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, for instance, one common risk is that, the testing team
Yeah.
might not have experience with a specific technology or a tool.
Right.
So maybe we allocate some time for training
Right.
or bring in an expert consultant.
Right. So we're anticipating potential roadblocks
Yeah, always good to be prepared.
and having like a backup plan.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because things will inevitably come up.
Okay, now I'm curious about, the human element of testing.
Right.
We've talked a lot about processes and tools and things like that, but who are the people involved?
Right.
And what kind of skills do they need?
Yeah, I mean, the human element is really at the heart of software testing.
Mm-hmm.
While tools and automation are important,
Right.
it's ultimately the people who drive the process, make decisions, ensure the quality.
Right. They're the ones who are actually
Exactly.
doing the testing.
Right.
So a typical testing team, who does that consist of?
So you might have a test manager
Okay.
who oversees the entire effort.
Okay.
You'll have testers who are actually executing those tests.
Okay.
And you might even have developers
Oh, okay.
who are writing code
Yeah.
to automate some of those testing tasks.
Got it. So each role has its own specific
Yeah,
requirements and skills.
absolutely.
So what makes a great software tester?
Oh, that's a great question.
What are some of the qualities that they need to have?
So they need to be analytical, detail-oriented, able to spot inconsistencies, those subtle errors
Right.
that other people might miss.
Because some bugs are really hard to find.
Oh, yeah.
So they need to be able to...
Yeah, you got to be like a detective almost.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
They also need to be good communicators,
Okay.
able to explain those complex technical issues
Right.
to both technical and non-technical audiences.
So they need to be able to kind of bridge that gap
They do,
between
yeah.
the developers and maybe the people who are actually...
Yeah, the stakeholders, the project managers.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think, most importantly,
Mm-hmm.
they need to be passionate about quality.
Okay.
They got to be driven by a desire to deliver the best possible user experience.
Right. So it's not just a job.
No, it's a mindset.
It's
It's a passion.
a passion for
Yeah.
making things work well.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, that's really insightful.
Good stuff.
I think
Yeah.
it sounds like a really rewarding role, though.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, we've talked about the human resources. What about like the technical side of things, the actual,
What
right?
infrastructure we need for testing.
Yeah. So the technical infrastructure is super important.
Oh.
We need to consider things like the hardware, the software, the network resources
Okay.
that are going to support all these activities.
Okay.
So this might include things like dedicated testing servers,
Okay.
specialized testing tools,
Right.
and network configurations that simulate real-world conditions.
Right, because we want to make sure that it's going to work
Exactly.
in the real world.
Yeah, so for Guru 99 Bank, we need to make sure our testing environment
Right.
can handle that expected user traffic, the data volume, make sure that it accurately reflects, those different browsers, devices, operating systems.
Right, because everybody's using something different.
Exactly.
So we're like creating a little mini version
Yeah, like a mini replica.
of the live environment so we
Yeah.
can see how it performs.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's talk about the timeline aspect of
Right.
testing.
How do we go about, creating a realistic schedule and estimating the effort?
Yeah, so creating a schedule's kind of like mapping out our testing journey.
Okay.
We need to break down that whole process into smaller manageable tasks
Okay.
and estimate the effort for each of those.
Got it.
So this might involve considering things like the complexity of the software,
Right.
the experience of our team, and, of course, the availability of resources.
Right. So it's almost like, planning a road trip. You want to know
Exactly.
how long it's going to take to get there.
Yeah, where are we stopping along the way? What are we seeing?
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
But unlike a road trip, testing often involves detours, unexpected challenges.
Oh, yeah.
How do we, stay flexible and adapt when those things pop up?
So flexibility is key in software testing.
Okay.
We need to be prepared to adjust our plans as new information emerges.
Right.
Or if we run into unexpected issues, this might involve things like reprioritizing tasks, adding new testing activities, or even extending the timeline if we have to.
So it's like we need to have a plan,
Right.
but also be ready to,
Yeah. Deviate from the plan
yeah, exactly, deviate from the plan.
if we need to.
Okay, now let's talk about those deliverables,
Okay.
those tangible outputs of all this hard work.
Yeah.
What kind of documents, reports, artifacts can we expect?
So test deliverables, they're really the evidence of all of our testing efforts.
Okay,
It's a record of what we tested, how we tested it, and what we found.
got it.
Now, those deliverables can vary
Oh,
depending on the project,
right.
but some common ones are test plans, test cases, bug reports, summary reports.
Okay, could you maybe give us some examples of those and how they're used?
Sure. So a test plan,
Yeah.
it's got like a high-level document,
Okay.
outlines the overall strategy, the scope, the testing types,
Mhm.
resources we need,
Okay.
test cases.
Okay.
Those are way more detailed. They describe those specific steps
Right.
testers can take to test that feature,
Okay.
the expected outcome, the pass or fail criteria.
Right. So it's very
They're
specific.
very granular, yeah.
Okay.
Bug reports, as the name implies, document any defects or issues that are found.
Okay.
They include a description of the bug, steps to reproduce it,
Mm-hmm.
and its severity level.
So we know how important it is to fix.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. So we're creating this really comprehensive record
Yeah, like a history.
of our testing journey.
Yeah,
And that makes sense because, we need to be able to track
right.
what's been done.
You want that transparency and accountability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So documentation is like a really crucial part of this.
Absolutely. Essential for effective communication.
Mm-hmm.
Knowledge sharing helps us track progress, identify trends, and make those informed decisions about quality.
Well, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive
Yeah.
into the world of software testing.
Good stuff.
We've explored the key steps, the challenges, the trends, the future of this really critical field.
Absolutely.
And I think it's clear that testing is much more than just finding bugs.
Yeah.
It's a really complex and multifaceted process
It's a holistic approach.
that plays a vital role in, the success of any software project.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So as we wrap up here, any final thoughts for our listeners?
I would say remember that testing is an ongoing journey.
Okay.
As software evolves and user needs change,
Mm,
we got to continuously adapt our approach
right.
to make sure we're meeting those needs and delivering the best possible product.
So it's a constant learning process,
Always learning, yeah.
always evolving.
Exactly.
Okay, well, this has been fantastic.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I really appreciate you joining us today and sharing your expertise.
Absolutely my pleasure.
And for our listeners, thank you for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time.